You jump in fear, look around, and run under one of those shady plants. Okay, not a great choice, and definitely not the best time to recall that you're terrible at hide and seek. There's a huge, weird-looking animal coming out of the bushes, staring at you. Dinosaur! You scream, you shiver, you cover your eyes. Not exactly how you were expecting your morning to go. Wait a minute. Dinosaurs don't bark. You open your eyes. That thing definitely charged at you, but now it's just jumping around, wagging its long tail, barking, and sticking its tongue out. And it looks so familiar. It's a dog? You almost cry out in relief. That thing's weird. Dogosaurus? What else could it be? Big, gray, and hairy, but insanely familiar to a T-Rex. Its front legs are actually short little arms, and its long muzzle with sharp teeth is all over you. Well, Dogosaurus is covering you with dino slobber. Another hairy thing comes out of the bushes. White and fluffy, short front legs, long dark gray tail, ridiculously big ears. It's a dino rabbit. The two animals start chasing each other and goofing around. Is this for real? Dogosaurus gets bored and comes running up to you, starts rubbing its head on your arm. You pet it, while also wondering what to do next. What happens if this thing gets annoyed or hungry?
When we look at creatures in the animal kingdom, we often have the following thought. If they have similar traits, they must be related somehow. Zebras, horses, and camels must have some common ancestor. Same goes for dogs and jackals. Somewhere back in their lineage, they must have some common great-great-great-grand wolf, right? Well, the way evolution works in nature is way more complex. Take, for instance, convergent evolution, which is when different creatures evolve independently from each other but end up having similar traits. We only need to look at sharks and dolphins to see how this works. At first glance, they look very similar, aquatic creatures with some species having roughly the same size. But turns out they're mostly unrelated. Sharks are fish. They reproduce by laying eggs and evolved to have the ability to sniff out blood in the water to feed themselves. Dolphins, on the other hand, are mammals. They're friendly and have a way more interesting social life. Take bottlenose dolphins, which have their own special whistles that they use similar to how humans use their names. Not only do they develop this type of whistle to introduce themselves to other dolphins, but they can also learn such names so they can better communicate with each other. Sure, sharks and dolphins did have a common ancestor, but this one lived in the sea almost 300 million years ago. It's safe to say, dolphins and sharks aren't even cousins these days. Another more shocking example of convergent evolution is that of whales and bats. Most of the creatures we can name on the top of our heads use light and sight to understand the world around them. But there is a specific set of creatures that relies on sound to paint them a picture of their environment. What they do is they emit a sound which bounces back to them depending on the object it hits. This ability is called echolocation. Animals that have this feature emit sounds at frequencies above human hearing, called ultrasound. Those sound waves bounce off objects while they move around, allowing them to figure out where they are in a certain space. Echolocation is mostly used by toothed whales and by some species of bats. What's similar in both of these animals is that they need to hunt in the darkness. Despite this, they echolocate in very different ways. Bats, for instance, use their throats to generate ultrasound from their mouth or nose. Then, they proceed to listen for changes in the echoes. Their echolocation is so finely tuned that they can distinguish targets less than 0.01 inches apart, even if their target is moving. Whales, on the other hand, echolocate by pushing air through their nasal cavity. This movement creates vibrations in a special fatty organ called the melon. This organ focuses and modulates the sound, which then passes into the water around the whale. Whales then pick up the reflections of these sounds through their lower jaw and around the ears. Another striking example of evolutionary convergence is that of ichthyosaurus and dolphins. Visually, the Mesozoic fish lizards named Ichthyosaurus seem very similar to modern dolphins. But the friendly mammals are much more related to giraffes and camels than the ancient creatures. Despite being 200 million years apart, they do share some common traits which mislead people into thinking they belong to the same species. But that's mostly because they lived in the same environment. They both evolved to feature dorsal fins, which keep them balanced while swimming. Now, let's look at Phytosaurus and crocodiles. The first ones were reptiles that roamed the Earth back in the Triassic period. They weren't dinosaurs, but they lived at the same time as the first dinosaurs did. Even though they look very similar, the first crocodiles popped up more than 70 million years later in the Cretaceous period. These two even fooled paleontologists at first. They initially assumed that phytosaurs were the ancestors of crocodiles. Placodonts and turtles look similar too. Placodonts, however, appeared about the same time as the dinosaurs did, somewhere around 235 million years ago. Like modern turtles, they lived in marine environments, but they were surrounded by predators. So, they evolved to have really strong shells to protect themselves. Turtles, however, made it to the scene around 100 million years later. Even modern cats have ancient lookalikes. They were called the Sparacidons, but they were carnivores and marsupials. They used to live in the South American area and resembled the saber-toothed tiger, which is now extinct. Speaking of saber-toothed tigers, how about one that's also related to the kangaroo? Yeah, this creature used to freely roam the Earth around 300 million years ago. The Thylacosmilus may have looked like a feline, but it was a marsupial, meaning it had a pouch of skin in which it carried its pups for a certain period after their birth, like kangaroos and opossums do today. It's difficult to estimate what they looked like since a full skeleton has never been found, but we do know they weighed between 180 to 260 pounds. When we picture a present-day elephant, we always imagine them with their tusks protruding upwards. Well, that's not how their ancestors did it. About 20 million years ago, there lived a prehistoric elephant-like creature named Deinotherium. It did, however, have both tusks curving down from their jaw. As with many other prehistoric creatures, we don't know why they had this feature the other way around. But one theory suggests they used them as anchors. By securing themselves to riverbanks, they were able to safely sleep without drifting off. The last thylacine passed away in the early 20th century. Their extinction was one of the most tragic natural events in modern times. For the last 2,000 years, they have been known to live only on the island of Tasmania. Despite the name, they looked more like foxes than felines. However, thylacines were marsupials rather than placental mammals like foxes. The two-lake wallaby was one of the most beautiful and majestic creatures ever to have lived. It used to be found in Australia and New Zealand. They were very similar to the kangaroos and featured fine fur with shifting bands of darker and lighter gray across their backs. Surprisingly, they were dubbed monkey face, but they had no connection whatsoever to modern monkeys, apart from both being mammals. What made them so special was the way they moved around. Their standard movement consisted of 2 short hops, followed by a long one. After that, the wallaby would simply stare into the sky. Don't be fooled though, the two-legged wallaby was extremely rapid. Females were generally taller than males, and they appear to have been quite sociable animals, at times being particularly fond of a certain location. They were also nocturnal. Hyracoodonts and horses share a lot of similar features, but hyracoodonts used to exist in the Eocene and Oligocene periods, and they went extinct around 23 million years ago. In their whole group, they featured very diverse species and came in many different sizes, from the small pony-like to the colossal Paraceratherium, which is one of the largest land-living mammals ever to exist. Modern horses, however, appeared around 2 million years ago. Let's do a little experiment together. Start by stretching your arms out. If you were to draw a line from your fingertips to your shoulder, it would measure around 28 inches. Now, try to picture an insect with a wingspan this big. Hold on a minute, you won't need a large can of bug spray, don't worry. They're extinct. But the gigantic Meganeuropsis did live around 250 to 300 million years ago. However, they most likely resembled the present-day dragonflies, despite not being technically related. Scientists figured out that they were not true dragonflies because of differences in the shape of their wing veins. Scientists still don't know why these bugs turned out so big. Some believe insects are limited in size because of the small quantity of oxygen they're able to take in. In the times when these insects roamed the Earth, the levels of oxygen in our atmosphere were much higher, so that might be one explanation. Other specialists think that they got so big because there wasn't any other predator large enough to pick them up from the ground.
The sight of its fin in the water nearly stops your heart. It's the reason you feel so uneasy going for a swim at the beach. That massive, razor-toothed hunter that's made its name known, the great white shark. So, if the ultimate terror of the sea is leaving the area, it must be for a good reason. But what could possibly scare the great white away? A giant Lovecraftian monster that makes even Megalodon look tiny? Nah, not even close. Nothing can clear a portion of the ocean as quickly as orcas can. When their powerful pods come looking for food like seals and squids, even the biggest, scariest sharks leave the area without looking back. It's not known if these whales specifically target great whites, or they're just keeping the competition out of the area. But what marine experts do know is that sharks flee, sometimes not even coming back until the following year. Yeah, makes sense. Orcas are much larger than great whites in size. They have plenty of teeth, and they'll use them to satisfy their merciless desire for meat. Orcas are also highly intelligent and will work as a team to get what they want, whether that's catching a school of fish, getting seals off the ice, or even chasing down humpback whales. So, if the great white shark itself is scared of the mighty orca, should you be? Well, me personally, I keep my distance from any wild animal. But maybe this will help you sleep better at night. Orcas are known to be picky eaters. Good news for you, human isn't on the menu. They aren't likely to change their diet just because you're in the water today. Oh, by the way, orcas aren't even whales. They're technically the largest species of dolphin. And sharks are also afraid of their relative, the bottlenose dolphin. Even a single bottlenose is too powerful for a shark, but they're tougher when they travel as a pod. Sharks are easily outmaneuvered by the highly agile marine mammals. They use that blunt snout like a battering ram. This basically annoys the shark so much that it just leaves the area. Now, if you think about other top hunters in the animal kingdom, wolves always come to mind. Packs can take over vast territories. And since they're at the top of the food chain, they get to pick and choose from a large menu with anything they please. They're highly intelligent, fast, and agile, but probably their biggest advantage? Numbers. If grizzlies or mountain lions try taking advantage of them, the numbers game always works in the wolves' favor, leading to the hunter becoming the hunted. Even without numbers, they dominate and terrify. It's too hard for any other animal to target a lone wolf, so even they are usually left alone. Imagine being able to pounce a wild boar in below freezing temperatures while dressed in orange against a completely snow-covered white environment. Siberian tigers are clearly not playing around. Over 10 feet long and weighing up to 400 pounds, they're the largest of all wild cats. This kitty could easily jump right over your head while carrying double its body weight. The only animal that can really challenge this king of the forest is a large enough brown bear, and it'd be a close call. No wonder the Siberian tiger is the top of the food chain in its part of the globe. As for the top boss in the waters of South America, that would be the green anaconda. Not even jaguars and caiman are safe around the biggest snake in the world. The murky waters of riverbanks camouflage the giant snake perfectly. They go unnoticed, sitting there waiting for something to come have a drink. And then, whoosh, the snake strikes. It uses its sharp curved teeth and 15 feet of pure muscle to hold its lunch in place. Luckily for most animals, after eating their fill, anacondas can go weeks or even months without worrying about their next meal. But the world's biggest snake isn't the most dangerous. That title belongs to the black mamba. Lions, spotted hyenas, giraffes, and even elephants will avoid the mamba at all costs. They all know one bite can stop them very quickly. Growing up to 14 feet, it's the second longest venomous snake in the world after the king cobra. The African black mamba does hold the top spot as the world's fastest snake. It slithers along going 12 miles per hour. That's about where most treadmills max out. Not top dog, but worth a mention is the green anaconda's neighbor, the electric eel. Very few animals are willing to take on such a highly charged creature. Electric eels have around 6,000 special cells that can produce up to 800 volts of electricity. That's more than 6 times the standard U.S. wall socket. That's enough to knock a horse off its feet and to power holiday lights. In 2019, a Tennessee aquarium hooked some tree lights up to their eel tank. Every time the eel shot the water, the trees lit up. Now, it's been said that the electric eel can recycle its volts in a process called revolting. Nah, I made that up. One more truthful eel fact to knock you off your feet: electric eels are air breathers. They have to surface about every 10 minutes to fill their mouth with air. Yep, their single lung is in their mouth. Does the king of the jungle reign unchallenged? In books and movies, sure. In real life, not so much. For one, their home is on the African plains, not the jungle. A whole assortment of contenders, like hyenas, leopards, and crocodiles, are always trying to take the king's crown. Even zebras and giraffes can stop the big cats with a quick kick if they're cornered. If we go by bite force, the African Nile crocodile has the biggest that humanity has ever measured. Its jaws are 5 times more powerful than that of a lion's. Now earlier, with the water critters, all you had to do was avoid the water. Good luck avoiding a lion. They can run 50 miles per hour, jump the length of a school bus, and climb trees. The lion's biggest challenger for the apex role is the African wild dog. These two are constantly going at it because they hunt for the same food in the same area. Where there's a big pride of lions, the dogs have no choice but to flee. But they've got one thing against the cats: endurance. Lions might reach incredible speeds, but that's only in short bursts. It takes too much energy to carry 400-plus pounds of muscle over long distances while going as fast as you can. African wild dogs, though, have long, slender legs and big lungs for their body size, meaning they can run fast and keep it up for miles. That's how they hunt. Their lunch just gets tired of running. There's one animal brave enough to take on the king if the cat gets too curious: the hippo. They may seem cute and squishy, but hippos are one of the most dangerous animals on the planet. Based on statistics, you should fear them way more than great white sharks. And there's nothing squishy about them. Hippos are pure muscle and weigh as much as a car. Their pointy canine teeth can grow longer than your forearm. These guys aren't afraid of anything. Even lions and crocodiles prefer to keep their distance. Their name means water horse, and they do spend up to 16 hours a day submerged. Funny thing is, hippos can't really swim. If you see one swimming, it's actually pushing itself off the lake or river bottom. It can still beat even the best Olympic swimmer speed, so watch out. Yep, move aside, Leo. Hippos are the true apex animal of Africa. But I wouldn't get close enough to give them the award. As for the ruler of the forest, make way for the grizzly bear. Weighing over half a ton, you'd be mistaken thinking these large fluff balls are slow and bumbling. Being able to maintain a speed of 25 miles per hour for long stretches is too easy for the behemoth brown bear. Uphill, downhill, and on every terrain, they're the off-road SUV of the animal world. Without having any natural enemies, this bear is at the top of its local food chain. Good thing they sleep for a third of the year. Just hope you don't run into a grizzly, ever. But especially right before it's about to go into hibernation. They spend the autumn months fattening up for winter. And they're even hungrier than usual. Now, being the largest bird of prey in North America, it's no wonder the golden eagle is found all over the continent in woodlands and mountain ranges. Their wingspan is nearly 8 feet. And they don't call it eagle vision for nothing. These birds can spot a rabbit from 3 miles up in the air. It'd be like you seeing an ant while standing on top of a 10-story building. Golden eagles can also make quick dives from a great height. During these dives, they can reach speeds up to 200 miles per hour, as fast as a flying arrow. Looking for something slimy? Well, many people tend to believe that snails are just slugs with shells. But even though they look so similar, they're completely different species. Slugs don't need any protective shells, as all their internal organs are, well, internal, inside their slimy bodies. They can squish themselves and get into hard-to-reach places, which is why slugs can often be found in the most unlikely spaces, like under tree bark, or inside tiny crevices, or at the library pretending to study for exams. Snails, on the other hand, are tightly connected with their shells and can't survive without one. Unlike hermit crabs, which replace their shells as they grow, snails are born with a shell on their back. Baby snails look adorable with those fragile translucent bubbles that calcify and become bigger and tougher with age. Cute? Well, you be the judge. Many of the snail's internal organs are inside the shell too, meaning that if it gets crushed or damaged, well, the animal would probably not survive. Still, a snail can repair small scratches and cracks in the shell with the help of proteins and calcium secreted by its mantle. Now, turtles are very close to snails in this regard, by the way, because contrary to common myth, they can't leave their shell at a whim either. A turtle shell is an integral part of its body, and despite the reptile being able to hide its head and paws inside to protect itself from predators, its skeleton is fused with the hard shell, and just like any other animal skeleton, it grows with the turtle itself. Now, koalas do only eat eucalyptus leaves, but there are over 600 different kinds of those, and koalas only munch on 30, or just 5% of what's available on the menu. So it has to be a very specific eucalyptus tree to make a good meal for a picky koala. These adorable creatures also have something in common with domestic cats. They sleep for 18 to 20 hours a day. Polar bears aren't at all white. Their skin is black under the fur. They need the white color to disguise themselves while on the hunt. The color black absorbs the sun better than any other, while white fur doesn't stop sunlight. Rays pass right through it. In a sense, a polar bear has transparent fur. There's a myth that dogs and cats see the world in black and white. In reality, they just can't distinguish some colors. Nobody knows how exactly dogs see. Some think they only distinguish 2 colors. Could be blue and yellow for all we know. But they can see shades of other colors better than people. And cats have wonderful night vision. They need about 7 times less light than a human to see in the dark. Now, giraffes were thought to be mute, but recently it's been found that they make low-frequency sounds at night to communicate with each other. During the day, they don't say a word and warn each other of danger in a very unusual way, by moving their well-developed eyebrows. It's likely that at night it's difficult to see the eyebrows, so they start talking for real. While we're on the topic of giraffes, these animals sleep much more than 30 minutes a day, but probably not as much as you do. Their sleeping pattern is quite typical. After researchers monitored a herd of giraffes, they found out they slept at night and took short naps in the afternoon. In total, each giraffe had around 5 hours of sleep every day. Oh, and by the way, a herd of these guys is actually known as a tower of giraffes. Makes sense with the long necks. Seagulls can drink seawater. There are salt-secreting glands near their eyes. These glands purify seawater very quickly, and the salty residue comes out through the nostrils. Yep, you guessed it, salty snot. The Adelie penguins are real romantics. They only have one partner for life. The male must give a smooth stone to the female to create a family. You could say that's kind of an engagement ring. Like humans, though, a female penguin may refuse and not accept the ring. Speaking of animal love, foxes are romantic too. Male foxes are good fathers and husbands. They're devoted to their loved ones for life. They look after the females and even pick fleas from their fur. Aww. Male foxes improve their whole houses and take an active part in their baby's upbringing. Dolphins can sleep with one eye closed and the other one open. Half of the brain dreams and rests, and the second half closely monitors the environment for signs of danger. The perfect brain for sleeping during boring classes and meetings. Hey, I didn't say that. Besides, dolphins manually control their breathing. They can simply drown if their whole brain is sleeping. Sea otters are the cutest sleepers among all animals. In the summer, because of the heat, sea otters spend all the time in water. They swim on their backs and sleep in that position. The babies are sleeping on their mother's stomach, and two adults hold each other by the paws so that they're not carried apart by water currents. Ostriches don't stick their heads in the sand when threatened. In fact, these guys don't bury their heads at all. This myth has spread thanks to that famous idiom to hide one's head in the sand. In real life, ostriches have to dig holes in the sand for their eggs because they're flightless birds. To make sure they're evenly heated, ostriches put their heads in there to rotate the eggs from time to time. But ostriches still have some escaping mentality. When they face some threat, they can flop to the sand and stay perfectly still, pretending they aren't alive. Now, according to a popular misbelief, sharks can breathe only while moving because swimming helps them push water over their gills. Although many kinds of sharks are designed this way, many others, like bottom-dwelling nurse sharks, don't need swimming to pump oxygen-rich water over their gills. Meanwhile, all sharks do lack swim bladders, so if they stop swimming, they'll probably sink to the bottom. But luckily, a shark's body can't be compressed. That's why rapid descents or ascents are safe for them. Scientists from Japan played audio recordings for cats to prove they're truly dismissive. In those recordings, the owners of the cats called them by their names. Cats' pupils dilated, the animals moved their tails, legs, or ears. Cats heard people, but rarely responded. It's all about evolution. Cats came to people because they were attracted by mice that ate grains. They lived close to people, but were never tame. And yet, we keep feeding them. Birds are actually the only surviving dinosaurs. They evolved from theropods, the dinosaurs that ran on two legs. Yep, T-Rex is a distant relative of chickens, ostriches, and even hummingbirds. In reality, flamingos are white. The bird turns pink due to beta-carotene. This pigment is found in the algae and the shrimp that it feeds on. You can change your color too. If you eat a lot of carrots, your skin will turn slightly orange. This will happen because of the high beta-carotene content in the vegetable. Sailors from all over the world talked about the giant squid they met on their voyages. For many years, scientists considered monsters with long tentacles to be a myth. But in 2004, the first photo of a giant squid was taken. They actually exist. Scientists have registered an animal that has grown to 43 feet. Mosquitoes actually bite some people more than others. The most delicious humans are those with type O blood. Also, these insects have really good eyesight. They're attracted by green, black, and red colors. So, check the color of your clothes before you go camping. You can actually put a shark in a trance for 15 minutes. To do this, you need to stroke the nose of a dangerous animal with your hand. This sort of hypnosis is called tonic immobility that happens thanks to the receptors in the shark's nose. When stroked, the receptors send a lot of signals and the shark's brain is unable to process them all. Now, what it doesn't say here is exactly how you get close enough to a shark to rub its nose. I'd say that's important information, don't you think? Elephants aren't afraid of mice per se, but these massive animals have bad vision. They also move fairly slowly. That's why they can get startled by a bird or a small creature, like a mouse, darting past them. Just the element of surprise, nothing more. The chameleon can change its color, but this creature doesn't do it to camouflage itself. The color change helps the animal regulate its temperature and communicate with peers. Now, when most dogs pant, their tongues hang out of their mouths. That's why many people think that's how they sweat. In reality, dog sweat glands are located on their paw pads. Plus, there are other sweat glands all over their bodies. Dogs pant to evaporate moisture from their nasal passages, tongues, and the lining of their lungs. This also helps to cool them down. You might leave wasps alone, but don't be so sure they'll do the same. Bees do respect human boundaries, and if you don't bother them, they won't hurt you. But wasps are so bad-tempered, they can sting you even if you're just walking by their nest. Well, phooey on them. Looks like a normal garden, right? Zoom in just a little. More. A little more. Okay, pan to the right. No, you're right. Bingo! What's that you're looking at? A stick? Wait a minute. Ah, there it is! Now that's what I call camouflage. The mantis is a beast in the insect world. Its preferred menu? Other insects, and birds, and frogs, even mice. These mini machines come in many sizes and colors and are found in almost every corner of the world. Most of them are green or brown to blend in with their surroundings, but others like to put on something flashy and are always dressed for the occasion. These powerful insects are a farmer's best friend. They chomp up all the vermin and parasites, leaving the fields nice and clean. Ah, good old mantises. And look at that! It's making its way to another branch. Its large front legs act as a grappler and hook to latch onto anything that strikes its fancy. Those legs have sharp spikes on them, and getting caught in that grip would be the last place you'd want to be. And its back legs are powerful enough to lunge itself at anything tasty. There's no chance for escape. And besides looking mean, they're fast, like blink of an eye fast. They catch their daily meal without even breaking a sweat. Pretty flashy. And they don't like to waste time. They start eating their lunch while it's still alive and kicking. Ooh. But enough about the mantis. Let's go down to ground level. Ooh, check out that snake in the grass. Cunning little thing. It's a small snake, only about a foot long, and it doesn't eat anything outside its strict diet. It feasts on little insects, birds, and mice. It slithers its way onto the tree, not knowing the mantis is there waiting, disguised as a twig. The mantis sees everything. It's able to turn its triangular head a full 180 degrees to get the perfect view. It has 2 compound eyes and 3 other simple eyes squeezed in between. Definitely not afraid of a little eye contact. The snake slides its way up the tree trunk and inches its way closer to the mantis. They lock eyes. The snake launches itself and bites into the mantis's leg. The mantis slips and falls down the tree. Just in time, it manages to reach out and hang onto a small tree branch and regain its balance. It sinks into its signature fighting stance. Woo, that was quick. No preparation, no warm-up, nothing. The snake slithers its way down, and once again, they're face to face. They stare at each other. Who's gonna make the first move? A mantis usually lifts its arms in the air and expands its back wings to make it look larger when it's getting threatened. Ah, remember the Karate Kid? Yeah, just like that. But not today. It's confident enough against this puny grass snake. The snake, meanwhile, doesn't know what to expect. It's never faced such an alien-like creature before. It's like a stick, but also looks delicious. Confusing. After a second, the snake makes another lunge. It opens its jaws and tries to bite the mantis, but it misses. The mantis dodges easily and grabs hold of the snake's neck. It tries to take a bite, but the snake wiggles free in spite of the mantis's sharp spikes on its legs. The snake's free, but the damage is done. Those spikes penetrated the snake's thick skin. 1 point for Team Mantis, but the snake isn't quitting anytime soon. It surprises the mantis with a sneak move and catches it off guard. But the mantis manages to do a little hop, a little jump, and grapples the snake to the ground. And this particular mantis is snake-size hungry. TKO, if you know what I mean. The snake never had a chance. But it might not end so quickly if the mantis was facing a hornet. Now we're talking. A flying beast with a beefy stinger versus a quick-footed, clawed fighting machine. Okay, we got time. Let's do it. The mantis stands guard, motionless. It turns its head around and all 5 eyes scan the sky, the ground, watching, waiting. So far, nothing. The ground is clear and the sky is a spotless blue. Then, a quick shadow-like movement flashes across the sky. The mantis couldn't get a good look at it. Another swoosh and a flash of color, this time from behind. Something's toying with the mantis, trying to weaken it psychologically. But the insect holds its ground. A true mantis doesn't flinch. This time, the hornet flies right past it. Those buzzing wings make a sound like a mini helicopter. The mantis is prepared and double-checks its equipment. It looks down at its front legs to make sure they're ready for anything. It's a game of patience. Who's going to show weakness first? The hornet swoops down and tries to sting the mantis. But the mantis is fast enough to move out of the way, but not quite fast enough to grab hold of the flying beast. It'll have to wait for the hornet to come around again. Then it'll be ready. The mantis needs to time this thing just right. If it can get the perfect angle, it can grab hold of the hornet and wrestle it down. But the hornet is too clever. It keeps coming in at different speeds and angles. The mantis is used to ambushing its opponent, so just waiting around to be stung isn't its favorite activity. But it's quick enough to ward off any attacks. Another flash, and the hornet surprises the mantis from behind. It knocks it down. The hornet almost engages its stinger, but just misses. The mantis sees its chance. It gets back up, but one of its back legs is damaged. This could be a huge advantage for the hornet, since the mantis needs both back legs to lunge and pounce. It wobbles around a bit, trying not to appear weak. Speed and counterattacks aren't an option anymore for the mantis. But at least the hornet isn't as quick as a snake. Even without its back legs, the mantis is still powerful. The hornet comes in from another direction and tries to sting the mantis, but the mantis shifts position and manages to escape. But as hard as it tries, it just can't grab hold of the hornet. The hornet flies up higher than ever and uses gravity to build up some serious speed. It misses again, but the impact of the diving hornet damages the mantis's other leg. It can't move. It looks like it's all over. There's no way for the mantis to escape. The hornet decides to go in for one final sting, but this time the mantis actually grabs hold of the hornet. Without the use of its hind legs, the mantis can't seem to pin it down properly. The hornet manages to hover a little, straining to fly away to safety. The mantis's weight pulls it back down. The more they wrestle, the more the mantis's spiky front legs start to dominate. They grip the hornet tighter and tighter, digging their spikes in deeper and deeper. The mantis sees this as an opportunity to start biting the hornet, but the hornet also has powerful jaws and bites back. Meanwhile, a small little housefly watches in the background, frozen in fear. "Shoo, fly! You shouldn't be here. It's dangerous. Buzz off." The scuffle breaks apart as the hornet is somehow able to escape the mantis's grip and crawl away. Crawl, not fly. The mantis was able to damage the hornet's wings. The mantis digs deep and finds a hidden energy reserve. It crawls up to the hornet and manages to grab it again, this time from behind. This way, the hornet won't be able to sting the mantis or even bite it. The hornet can see what's about to happen, and it's helpless. The mantis's claws are locked in way too tight. The mantis begins biting. It may have a smaller jaw than the average hornet, but it's quick and just as powerful. I wouldn't want to be on the other end of those jaws. The hornet tries everything, crawling, flying, jumping off the branch, but nothing works. It succumbs to the mantis's claws and its never-ending appetite. Another stunning victory for the amazing mantis. Now, aren't you glad middle school wasn't like this? So, we all know that Mother Nature is wise. If she blesses some creature with a particular body part, it should make perfect sense, right? Well, yeah, but still, some wildlife shots make you wonder if evolution has gone the wrong way. Snakes' natural design allows them to swallow a whole mouse. But in some cases, this cool ability can turn against them. Yes, snakes can actually swallow themselves. Scientists believe that they mostly do this because of stress, captivity, temperature regulation, hunger, or illness. The snake is pretty helpless in this situation, you can tell. If it doesn't get help in time, digestive juices may begin to corrode the swallowed tail. So if you ever catch your pet snake doing this, try to stop it, or take it to the vet. Okay, but what about the fangs, I hear you ask? Does a venomous snake have immunity to its own venom? Well, if the snake digests it, it will be okay. It's because protein is a primary component in venom. And besides, the venom is excreted by the gland in the snake's mouth. So no matter whom the snake bites, chances are that it's going to drink a bit. So the only way a snake can actually suffer from its own venom is by biting itself straight into the blood vessel. In this case, it'll experience the same reaction as any other animal. Now, think you're having a bad hair day? Hey, check this guy out. Chris was an Australian merino ram who became a celebrity in 2015 after being discovered in the wild. Farmers shorn him and gained nearly 90 pounds of wool. When the animal was found, he carried over 5 years' worth of fleece on his body. But Chris belonged to the domestic sheep breed that needs to be shorn regularly. Otherwise, the animal is at great risk of injury and infection. So the lives of these cuties depend directly on going to the hairdresser. Shall we talk about horns? Cattle, goats, and many other species proudly wear this fancy headdress not only for fashion, but also as a weapon for brutal battles. If you ask this bighorn sheep ram directly how old he is, you'll probably hear something like, "Bah." But if you want to get a more precise answer, you can count the number of rings on his horns. The biggest and the darkest ring usually marks the 4th birthday, when the ram matures enough for mating. Although animal horns may look very tough, in fact, most of them are made of keratin. It's the same protein that builds human hair and nails. Horns never stop growing as the animal ages, just like our own hair. And eventually, they can curl into really extravagant shapes, making these weapons turn against their owners. This is what a Wiltshire sheep horn looks like when it's young. But as the years go by, the horns typically curl in front of its face. And while most grow out harmlessly, the inward-growing horns can end up dangerously close to the sheep's head. Like this ram who's having bad luck, to say the least. Its horn has slowly grown into its own skull, and eventually, well, it didn't end well for the sheep. Of course, this would hardly have happened on a farm, because people would have made a preventive horn cut. But unfortunately, in the wild, animals cannot use hairdresser services. That's why they use rocks and branches to rub and grind away at their horns to keep them safe, just like humans trim their nails. Faulty genetics is not the only reason for the horn distortion. You see, when males of this species want to fight for dominance, they begin to butt heads to show each other who's the alpha male here. These battles can break horn plates, making them grow at weird and dangerous angles. The fancier the original shape of the horns is, the more problems their fracture may cause. This poor African kudu is a bright example. Fortunately, in some cases, unlimited body part growth can be good for the animal. Just take a look at these adorable smiles. If you happen to break off your own molar tooth, your dentist would probably say it's irreversible and offer a replacement. But if an alpaca breaks its front teeth, all it has to do is wait a bit. Although these animals don't have upper teeth, their lower teeth constantly grow throughout their lifetime, and they might look pretty creepy when they get too long. That's why some farmers prefer trimming them from time to time, just like pet owners cut the nails of their cats or dogs. Now, llamas look so similar to alpacas that many people confuse these two species. But the significant difference between them is that llamas' front teeth are encased in enamel. That's why, unlike alpacas, they don't possess the superpower of limited growth. Too bad. Unlike the keratin horns, deer antlers are made entirely of bone. Typically, only male deers, called stags, grow antlers. Very rarely, females can grow them too due to a serious hormone imbalance. This is a deer equivalent of a beard on a human female that sometimes can appear due to various diseases. Adult deers grow and shed their antlers annually, which coincides with the breeding season. At first, their antlers are covered in velvet, a protective skin with blood vessels. But once the antler is fully developed, the deer gets rid of the velvet, just like snakes shed their skin. Although this process doesn't harm the deer, it may look pretty spooky. Once the brand new antlers are ready, stags begin to fight with other males over the lady's attention. Usually stags barely eat or sleep during this competition. And if you ever question whether the antlers of two deers can get locked together, the answer is yes. Every stag is risking ending up stuck with his own rival instead of having a romantic night out with a female deer. Bummer. Moreover, all the traumas that the deer gets during the mating season can influence further antler growth if specific nerves get damaged. Just like horns, antlers can develop at distorted angles because of genetic failures. Some mutations can even make them grow monstrously large. This unlucky deer can barely move his head without losing balance. Also, if a deer breaks one of its legs, its body can speed up the healing by sacrificing the bone and blood material from one of the antlers, and thus this antler will get thinner and weaker. And speaking of facial extensions, we cannot skip the tusks. Please meet Babirusa from Indonesia. This ancient boar first emerged over 35,000 years ago. It's easy to confuse these big tusks with horns, but they are actually upper canines. They tend to pierce through the skin of the boar's face as it matures. Scientists believe that these intimidating tusks have evolved as a tool to protect eyes and throat while fighting with other males during mating season. But this design doesn't seem very thoughtful. If a male boar doesn't grind his tusks regularly, they can end up curling back into his own skull, which can blind him or even worse. Now, what if I told you that hoofs can grow out of control just like horns and antlers? It took evolution millions of years to turn the middle toe of the animal's foot bone into the hoof. And just like toenails, they tend to grow and curl into creepy shapes if they aren't cut regularly. When donkeys or horses don't have a chance to wear down their hoofs naturally by walking on hard surfaces, they tend to overgrow. This makes the animals walk on the balls of their feet and overstretch the tendons, which may result in pain and bone loss. And eventually, they can lose the ability to walk at all. So if you ever come across a horse with curly hooves, consider calling the experts to give it an emergency manicure. Perhaps one of the most obvious questions regarding the undersea world is, can a fish drown in the water? Yup, it can. Although gills are an amazing gift of nature, there are still many factors that may deprive a fish of healthy breathing. When the oxygen level in the water is too low, fish begin to suffocate. But it happens very rarely in the wild. Oxygen deficit usually appears in aquariums that are not washed and replenished often enough. Also, parasites, diseases, and an overall imbalance in water components can cause the fish to drown. And on that note, I need to hoof it on out of here. Living at depths of up to 5,000 feet, the hagfish is one of the strangest creatures in the ocean. And there's plenty on the list. The goblin shark, sea spiders, red-lipped batfish, and even people swimming during winter. It's freezing, man! Get out! Although it looks like an eel, this fish belongs to the Agnatha species. That's fish without jaws, and the family also includes lampreys. Terrifying monsters with disc-shaped suction cup mouths filled with spiraling rows of teeth. Hagfish have 2 tongues, 4 hearts, and no eyes or stomach, like something from another planet. And what sets them apart from anything on this planet is that they have a skull but no spine. They don't have bones either. That unique spineless skull is made entirely out of cartilage, the same stuff in your ears and nose. That's right. Scaleless with skin that seems to fit over them like an oversized holiday sweater. It'd be a mistake to think this frail little creature would be an easy dinner. They've evolved to escape from other fish like Houdinis of the deep. And the trick is slime. Lots of it. When something tries to gobble them up or gets just too close for comfort, hagfish release a protein from the holes lining their sides. When this stuff meets the surrounding water, it balloons dramatically, as in 10,000 times. The more water touches it, the bigger this goo ball gets. A teaspoon of hagfish slime can turn into a bucketful in a second. It instantly clogs the gills of any fish trying to chomp down on our slimy friend, even sharks. But hagfish have gills too. So why doesn't the slime block their own? Easy peasy. This hagfish will simply tie itself into a knot and scrape the slime off its body. Doesn't mean their slime comes without inconveniences. Sometimes it gets in the hagfish's tiny nose. To get rid of it, they make themselves sneeze, sort of. Gesundheit. This fish's homemade goo is made of flexible strands that are surprisingly strong, as in stronger than nylon. Imagine falling into a pool of the stuff. You'd struggle to move your arms and legs to swim. It might feel like rubber bands tying you up. But you'd be perfectly safe as long as the stuff doesn't get in your nose or throat. In that case, you'd be as unfortunate as those gilled creatures trying to bite into the slimy fish. And hey, our own species is eyeballing it for loads of potential uses, from parachutes to cars and even clothing. Forget about diving in a pool of this goo. You could be wearing a slime suit in the future. But when it comes to landish creatures, the platypus is just as weird. This mammal has a duck bill, a beaver tail, webbed feet, and lays eggs. Like a lot of fish, the platypus and its relative, the echidna, have no stomach, but they don't need one. They store their food in their cheeks until they surface. Once they've eaten, the food goes straight to their gut. Just when the platypus couldn't get any stranger, they also sweat milk for their platypups. When winter has put bears, bats, snakes, and even myself into hibernation, there's one animal that does things a little differently. During the cold season, the wood frog lets itself freeze, sometimes for up to 7 months. Like a brown popsicle, they fill their body with a syrupy au naturel antifreeze to stop crystals from forming. And when the right time comes, they can just thaw themselves out, even multiple times a season. These frogs will find a nice covered area in the forest and wait until spring comes. Once they're thawed, they'll hop away like nothing happened at all. When your name's the boxer crab, you have to live up to it. Ding ding! Round 1! This little crab is super smart. It has sea anemones living in its claws, and these DIY boxing gloves pack a punch. Carrying around these little tentacled sea creatures helps this tiny crab defend itself against fish and anything bigger than it. When feeling disturbed, the crab starts swinging and its gloves start stinging. The tentacles of sea anemones are covered in stinging cells that help the animal capture its lunch. Yup, that's no plant, it's a hungry beast. It's a win-win relationship. For helping the crab protect itself, the gloves get a fun ride around the ocean floor and free meals. Its other names don't sound as tough, but I assure you, the pom-pom or cheerleader crab looks cute but shouldn't be messed with. If you're afraid of spider webs, this is one to avoid. Darwin's bark spider is an orb weaver type that creates a jaw-droppingly large web for a penny-sized spidey. The silk in its web is 10 times stronger than Kevlar and double the strength of any other spiders on the planet. And the webs themselves can be as big as a king-size bed. Not that you'd want to sleep in one. Their web bridges are even more impressive. They can be over 80 feet long. The spiders build them across rivers to catch bugs flying over the water, or you rafting down the rapids. Watch out! And here I thought I spent too much time on the web. Gone to the beach on a hot sunny day when you realize you're out of sunblock. Hey, just do what hippos do. When they sweat, they create their own sunscreen. Living in the water for most of its life, a hippo's skin must stay wet to keep hydrated. When they do have to venture out of the water, something strange happens. The red or pink color we sometimes see on hippos are little beads of fluid that absorb the sun's UV and protect the skin from burning. They're also highly acidic to help stop bacteria growing on the skin. Hippos might look big and clumsy, but they could easily outrun and outswim the best Olympic athletes out there. Must be why the ancient Greeks called them hippopotamus, the river horse. Now, when you're a plant, it's hard to defend yourself, but not for the acacia tree. It has built-in bodyguards, ants. When a few of the leaves are getting nibbled on, the vibrations alert the ant brigade to head out and stop the trespasser. Living in the hollow thorns of the branches, the acacia ants come out and shock the hungry animal with their wasp-like stinger. The tree is so grateful to the ants that it feeds them yummy nectar. Not only do the ants stop animals from grazing too much, they also help improve the tree's health by reducing the bacteria that would be on the leaves. Now, never heard of a sea squirt? I don't recommend getting too close unless you want water in your face. The sea squirt may look like an underwater plant, but it's an animal more closely related to us than a cockroach. These squishy little creatures are in an umbrella category with vertebrates, like you, me, and anyone or anything else with a fancy backbone. That big happy family is called the chordates. Starting as little tadpole-like larvae, sea squirts wiggle around in the ocean for a short time until they find a nice bit of water to call their own. Since they're unable to feed themselves, drastic measures must be taken, and I mean drastic. Like oysters, barnacles, and mussels, the sea squirt has a glue-like substance that cements it to the first place it lands. Once they've picked their forever home, they need to start eating. The first thing to go is their own tail. Then they absorb their gills and even their brain. No longer need the ability to navigate the ocean, it's become unnecessary. They're not heartless though. The sea squirt's ticker is very similar to a human's. It even looks a little like ours. Now here's one you won't forget. Lobsters, crayfish, and crabs have teeth in their stomachs. After they gulp something down, the food in their stomach gets ground up by large teeth. This is called gastric milling, and it helps the crustaceans digest it easier. One species of crab had to take it a step further, of course. The ghost crab uses these teeth not only for eating, but also to growl. By grinding their tummy teeth when scared or struggling with another crab, they're warning to get away. Well, when you don't have vocal cords, stomach growling will have to do. They're also the fastest type of crab on the planet. They can move 100 body lengths per second. That'd be like you running 1.5 football fields in the blink of an eye. Whoa, look at that! Wow, look at this cute little cookie cutter. At first glance, it looks like an oversized anchovy, but in reality, it's an undersized shark. This shark never grows bigger than 18 to 20 inches, but it doesn't make it less dangerous than its peers. They got their sweet cookie name because they have a unique feeding strategy. They bite off small chunks from much larger animals and get away with it. These little guys live deep down in the water column, making them quite mysterious and hard to study. We don't know exactly where they hang out, but they've been spotted all over the world, especially in tropical and temperate areas. The cookie cutter shark is a total parasite. It feeds off larger animals while keeping them alive. It uses its sharp upper teeth to latch onto the skin of bigger sharks, fish, or even marine mammals. Then, with its strong lower teeth, it scoops out a mouth-sized chunk of flesh or blubber. Ow! So watch out, because even big predators like bluefin tuna, great white sharks, and spinner dolphins can end up with scars from these little sharks. Now, there's one crazy story about a cookie cutter shark biting a person. Picture this: a long-distance athlete swimming between islands in Hawaii at night, surrounded by boats with bright lights attracting prey. Yep, that swimmer got a nasty bite on the calf, leaving a gnarly scar, but luckily no permanent damage. Lesson learned: don't mess with cookie cutter sharks during their feeding frenzy. To hunt like this, they have a well-equipped mouth. The mouth itself is like a short line that goes across, surrounded by these big fleshy lips that can suck stuff up. It's got a bunch of tooth rows in its jaws, like 30 to 37 in the top and 25 to 31 in the bottom, and they increase as it gets bigger. The upper teeth are small and narrow, standing up straight with a single smooth, pointy bit. The lower teeth, on the other hand, are way bigger and wider, almost like knives, and they interlock to make a saw-like cutting edge. Just like any other shark, cookie cutters lose their teeth throughout their lives. But here's where they're different: they swallow their lost teeth. Some scientists think they do this because they live in nutrient-poor deep waters and want to recycle important tooth-building materials, like calcium. That's a brand new approach to diet supplements, huh? Since they feed closer to the surface at night and deeper during the day, they're almost always in the dark. So, this sneaky little shark has these special light-producing organs called photophores that are strategically placed on its belly. These photophores help it blend in with the light coming from above, kind of like camouflage. It's a classic move in the bioluminescent world. The cookie-cutter shark also has this cool, non-glowing collar around its throat. Some scientists think this collar acts like a fancy lure, making it look like a tasty little fish from below. Imagine how irresistible that would be to a whole gang of hungry sharks. It's like a dinner invitation they can't refuse.
The sky suddenly turns orange. All you can see as you look up are millions of butterflies. You just got lucky to witness the spectacular natural show, the annual migration of monarch butterflies. Every fall, as the days get shorter and the temperatures go down in the northeastern US and Canada, these beautiful creatures leave their summer breeding grounds. They travel up to 3,000 miles to Mexico and never come back. Their perfect overwintering ground is high in the mountains. Millions of monarch butterflies are safe there in the canopy of OML fir trees. Once the winter is over, it's time for them to go back up north. They make a stopover around Texas to mate and lay eggs on milkweed plants. A few days later, these eggs turn into caterpillars that feed on the plant until they transform into grown-up butterflies. Now, it's their turn to continue the journey up north until they find a new breeding ground. This way, generations keep changing en route, and it may take up to 5 of them to get to the final destination back in Canada. It's a natural mystery how the butterflies traveling south live up to 8 months traveling with the air currents. The same species going back completes its life cycle in 5 to 7 weeks. Scientists still don't know why the monarchs migrate and how they find their way. It could be connected with the blooming of milkweed plants, their primary food source. They probably find their way around based on the position of the sun. Humpback whales are real champions when it comes to migration and size among mammals. They cover a distance of up to 5,000 miles following their lunch. In the summer, they move towards the poles to colder waters, where there's plenty of krill and small fish. In the winter, they go south towards the equator's tropical waters. They also travel to mate. They have specific locations where they gather to do it. During the winter breeding season, you can hear male humpback whales sing, most likely to attract females or mark their territory. They produce a long series of calls and can repeat the same song for several hours. When the song changes, all singers that are currently migrating pick up the new tune. It's amazing how they do it when the distance between groups can be over 3,000 miles. Sea turtles migrate for more sentimental reasons. For hundreds of millions of years, these cute family guys return to the exact place where they were born to lay their eggs. They can cover up to thousands of miles, mostly when the seasons change and the waters are of a comfortable temperature. It could take them years, since some of them travel across the Pacific Ocean between Indonesia and the west coast of the United States and Canada, which is a total of 10,000 miles. But how do they find the exact spot they need if their parents can't just send them a geotag? Scientists have found out that they navigate using the invisible lines of the Earth's magnetic field. It turns out that each part of the coastline has its unique magnetic characteristics. The turtles remember theirs and travel using their internal compass. The magnetic field changes slowly but surely, so they have to shift their nesting sites accordingly. Salmon are born in freshwater streams and move to the ocean as juveniles. Atlantic salmon are brown and spotted as they cover hundreds of miles in fresh water and turn silvery in the ocean, where they travel for up to 1,000 miles. Adult salmon stay in the ocean for 1 to 5 years, feeding mostly on zooplankton. Then it's time for them to go back to freshwater to spawn. On their way back to the breeding grounds, they have to ascend thousands of feet against the current in mountain streams. This challenging journey is called a salmon run. They set on this run because they know the stream they're headed to will be good for spawning, and they'll meet the right species to mate with. Young salmon remember the smell of their home stream and probably even take note of various points along the way to the ocean to find it again. Just like sea turtles, they use the Earth's magnetic field as a compass for their travels. Pacific salmon and most male Atlantic salmon only live for a few weeks after spawning, and some female Atlantic salmon survive and migrate back to the ocean. Caribou, better known as reindeer, are the champs when it comes to migration distance among land mammals. Every spring, they cover a distance of around 400 miles in Alaska, from their winter to their summer feeding grounds. Individuals cover up to 3,000 miles, but herd migration is way more spectacular. The largest herd has at least 260,000 members, and its migration territory covers an area larger than California. Scientists put radio tracker collars on some herd members and take thousands of photos to count them all. This census is organized every 3 years in good weather conditions to see if the population figures are rising or falling and track their migration patterns. Caribou grow through all this migration trouble to safely raise their newborn young. They reach remote grounds where golden eagles, wolves, and grizzly bears won't bother the youngsters during their first, most vulnerable days. Another good excuse to hit the road up north for them is to save themselves from mosquitoes, which would be a huge problem in warmer months. Plus, they get fresh seasonal foods from the areas they stay in. Their migration helps fertilize the grounds they pass by, which means the tundra should thank them for regenerating and protecting its grasslands. Wildebeest, also known as gnus, are relatives of antelopes and gazelles. They spend most of their lives in the Serengeti plains of southeastern Africa, grazing on the grassy savannas. Every year at the end of the rainy season, normally in May or June, millions of wildebeest head northwest in search of greener pastures, and then back again. This migration is so spectacular that it's considered one of the 7 wonders of the natural world. Sadly, not all wildebeest make it to their final destination, as they have to cross rivers full of giant crocodiles and pass by hungry lions and other predators. If you look at dragonflies' migration routes, you can call them real globetrotters. Scientists discovered one such route that spanned from India to the Maldives, Seychelles, Mozambique, Uganda, and back again for at least 8,700 miles. It's the longest insect migration we know of so far. It looks like they set on this epic journey when the temperature reaches a certain mark and the days start to grow longer. They seem to be following the rains as they start during the monsoon season in India and arrive for the rainy season in eastern and southern Africa. One fragile insect cannot complete the whole trip, so it turns into a sort of relay race that includes 4 generations of dragonflies. Each generation plays its role in the journey. Scientists can't put radio trackers on dragonflies as they do with other animals because the insects are too small. So, to put together the migration route puzzle, they analyzed 21 years of data from volunteer citizen scientists and also wing samples from museums. Each of the samples had a chemical code that could roughly tell where the insect was from. This data helped the scientists understand how far this or that insect traveled as an adult. Elephants are known to have traveled across Africa for centuries. They rely on their herd leader's memory when it comes to recalling the tricky migratory routes. This big elephant boss leads everyone else to sources of ripe food and water when the seasons change. They also migrate to avoid danger, which is mostly represented by humans. Elephants have developed their own communication methods to pass on information about prospective danger. They use chemical secretions, vibrations, gestures, and touch. Recently, many African countries have restored some of the oldest elephant migration routes. These big-eared guys usually avoid dangerous areas for generations, but once they know the route is safe, they start using it again.
Alright, you're scuba diving in the ocean, watching corals and colorful fish flitting by, when suddenly an enormous shadow appears above you. You look up and see a massive creature approaching you, its mouth a gaping abyss. Relax, just stay still and you'll be fine. This leviathan is a basking shark, one of the scary sea monsters that isn't really capable of doing harm to anyone. Basking sharks are filter feeders, just like baleen whales. They open their large mouths to swallow plankton, and don't even have teeth. It's late night in the Central American jungle. You're out in the wild to watch birds, and you hear flapping of wings. Excited, you look intently into your night vision goggles, only to see a face out of your worst nightmares. Don't scream, you'll scare it away. It's a perfectly harmless, wrinkle-faced bat, and it isn't interested in you. These are fruit bats, and wrinkles on their faces allow them to collect fruit pieces and juice for later snacks. By the way, their Latin name, Centuro senex, was given to them for their semblance to 100-year-old humans. Walking around a Nepali national park and deciding to wash your face in the river nearby, you freeze in terror. A crocodile is looking straight at you from no more than a few feet's distance. Then, it raises its snout above the water, and you exhale in relief. It's a gharial. These reptiles have long and narrow snouts that allow them to efficiently catch fish and, at the same time, prohibiting them from hunting any other prey. While still carnivores, gharials are pretty shy and will slither away at the sight of humans. Right now, there are no more than 1,000 of these crocodilians in the whole world, so let it go. Especially if it's a girl gharial. You dig your garden in the backyard and notice something moving on your shovel. You take a closer look and drop the tool in horror. A small creature looking like a hostile alien is scurrying away into some burrow in the ground. No worries. It's just a star-nosed mole. These critters have peculiar snouts that look like they've been blown up from within. Their eyes are small and weak, so the star on their nose helps them a lot to move around and seek food. It's always on the move, touching everything it can reach as if the tendrils were tiny fingers. Oh, you're bathing in the ocean again. Well, look to your right, there's a real toothed shark going right at you. Nah, don't panic. It's just a sand tiger shark. Neither a sand nor a tiger one, it's a vulnerable fish-eating shark that slowly swims in the seas and chases its prey from time to time. There have been no reports of it ever attacking humans, but it still has rows of sharp teeth, so don't try to touch it just in case. It may seem placid, but you don't want it to get a bite out of you, do you? Okay, from ocean to desert, you're in Australia and longing for some water. You see a likely spot and start digging the ground, only to stumble upon a creature straight from the depths of neither, all covered in thorns. It eyes you suspiciously and slinks away because it's just a thorny devil. Despite its ominous name, this lizard is harmless to humans. Horn-like bumps on its skin are for protection from predators and birds of prey. The thorns are hard, but as long as you don't touch them, you're fine. Now, if you have arachnophobia, it won't calm you down. But tailless whip scorpions you might meet in North and South America, as well as Asia and Africa, are more afraid of you than you are of them. Tell yourself that. These nightmarish creatures don't have stingers and won't even bite when threatened. The worst they could do, and only if you corner them, why would you do that, is prick you with their front legs, leaving tiny puncture marks on your finger. Many people even keep them as pets, and they're quite affectionate toward their owners. Yeah. If you ever stumble upon a burrow from which a hairless, big-toothed creature is peeking at you, just don't mind it and let it be. Naked mole rats are the sphinx cats among rodents. They're close relatives of mole rats, but, well, naked. And they're fascinating in their own right, too. Thanks to living entirely underground, they're almost totally cold-blooded, but can conform to any temperature outside. And their flappy, wrinkled skin doesn't feel any pain at all. So pins and prickles, as well as sharp teeth, don't scare naked mole rats. You're once again lost in the jungle, this time on Madagascar. Poor you. The night is fallen and you seek shelter. But when you think you've found a suitable tree to build a lean-to, you freeze in terror. A black, long-fingered hand appears on a tree branch right above you, and two huge yellow eyes are staring you down. Then you see a shaggy face and realize it's just a lemur, an aye-aye more precisely. This creature is native to Madagascar and only goes out at night, so you're lucky to see it. It fulfills a role of a woodpecker in tropical forests. It knocks on tree trunks to find bugs and uses its long, wizened fingers to reach inside. Tired of being scared, you seek your way home, but your horrors aren't over yet. There's a big red and white snake across your path. It hisses and lies in wait for you to move. You know it's a coral snake, a really dangerous venomous kind. You stop in your tracks, and only when it finally slithers away, you realize it was actually a milk snake. They often mimic venomous ones, not only coral snakes, to protect themselves from predators. Still, if you're not a snake expert, it's always best to stay away. Okay, this creature will infest your darkest dreams. A giant African millipede. It's big, it's glossy black, and it has hundreds of tiny crawly legs. And yet, if it had googly eyes, it could even be cute. Perhaps that's why so many people keep them as pets. That, and because they commonly live up to 10 years. Giant millipedes can't really bite. Their only defense is curling into a tight ball and secreting irritating liquid from the pores of its skin. If you dare touch it, don't rub your eyes or nose afterwards. It's quite unpleasant. Goliath bird eater is another popular pet creepy crawler. It isn't dangerous for humans, despite it looking like your worst nightmare. This is one of the largest spiders in the world, and as its name implies, it sometimes hunts small birds for food. But they aren't part of its regular diet. The spider prefers worms and amphibians. Make sure you don't frighten it though. It can still bite or release hairs in self-defense. The bite is similar to a wasp sting, and hairs can cause severe irritation on your skin. But mostly, this gentle giant is just shy and will crawl away at the sight of you. Oh dear, there's another snake approaching you, and fast! You're about to turn and run when you see a hulking 8-legged form cutting into the snake's path and leaping on it. It's another arachnid, and it looks even more terrifying than the snake. It's a camel spider. Not really a spider, nor a scorpion. These creatures belong to a separate family. They became the stuff of many urban legends, but in fact, they don't even have any venom. Sure, they can bite, and their jaws are pretty powerful, but camel spiders can't do much more to a human than just bite. They hide in the sand and burrow to leap on unsuspecting lizards, invertebrates, and yes, even snakes. And now, picture a pill bug. Not exactly a beauty, but since it's small, it's okay. But what if it were 10 times as large? No, definitely not okay. Still, such a creature exists, and it's a giant isopod. Thankfully, it lurks in deep, dark, and cold waters, so it won't ever come up in your backyard. Giant isopods grow to such enormous size because of something called deep-sea gigantism. Deep-dwelling creatures have to endure great pressure of water, extreme cold temperatures, and scarce food, so their metabolism slows down. Isopods don't move much, and more often than not just lie in wait until some poor small bug or crustacean crawls within their reach and they can munch on it. And though it looks like a many-legged chaos from below, a giant isopod can hurt you even if it wanted to. Just pet it already. Now sloths can hold their breath longer than dolphins. Yep, incredible but true. They slow their heart rate so much they can stay under the surface for up to 40 minutes. Unlike fish, dolphins and whales are aquatic mammals, which means they can't breathe underwater. When it comes to breathing, they're more similar to us than the fish. Both of them have lungs and they breathe air through something we know as a blowhole. When they're under the surface, they hold their breath until they come up for some air again. Dolphins can stay under the water for 10 minutes. A sperm whale can hold its breath for 90 minutes, while an elephant seal holds the record when it comes to aquatic mammals and can stay under the water for 2 hours without having to go up. There's a wasp so tiny, much tinier than its name, it's smaller than an amoeba, even though amoebas are made of one cell only. You can see this wasp has the same body parts as the rest of the bugs – wings, brain, eyes, and the rest. But it's really a tiny version of an insect since it's only 8/1000ths of an inch long. And the smallest adult insect we know of is a parasitic wasp with a big name, also known as the fairy fly. Their males don't have wings, they're blind, and only 5/1000ths of an inch long. Now, it's no coincidence each animal species has different colors and patterns. One of the reasons for that is to help them stand out when looking for their potential mating partners, or to send a warning to predators they're poisonous and hope they get the message right. Then there are ambush predators, such as tigers. It's very important for them to remain invisible because the difference is huge. If their prey sees them before they get there, no dinner that night. But why exactly are tigers orange? For us, orange is a color used for things that need to be ultra-visible. For example, items such as safety vests or traffic cones. To the human eye, orange will mostly stand out in the environment. So if there's a tiger coming for you, you'll spot it relatively easily. But humans have so-called trichromatic color vision. When light from your surroundings enters your eye, it hits the retina, a thin layer located in the back. To process that light, the retina uses two kinds of light receptors, rods and cones. Rods can only distinguish differences in light and darkness. They can't sense color. Our eyes will mostly rely on rods in dim light. Cones are in charge of color perception. Humans mostly have three types: cones for green, blue, and red. That's exactly why we call our vision trichromatic. Most humans see three primary colors, together with their colorful combinations. Apes and some monkeys also have such a style of vision. But most mammals that live on land, including cats, horses, deer, and dogs, have dichromatic color vision. Retinas in their eyes have cones for two colors only, green and blue. When humans get information from their green and blue cones only, they're considered colorblind since they can't, for example, tell the difference between green and red shades. This is similar with mammals that live on land. Deer are surely tigers' prey way more than humans, and deer don't see tigers as orange, but green. Green tigers would surely be more difficult to spot, which would mean more dinner for tigers. But evolution still decided to go with orange because it's simply easier to produce such a color. The only green mammal is a sloth, but its fur is not naturally green. It's because of the algae that grows in it, and they can hold their breath for 40 minutes. The water around the poles can get very cold during certain periods of the year. There's plenty of fish that live there, but when that happens, they need to swim away to survive. But there's a special group of fish native to the Southern Ocean near Antarctica. The temperatures there are from 28 to 39 degrees Fahrenheit. Technically, that's below freezing, but all those dissolved salts in the seawater don't allow it to freeze over. And these fish can survive because they have a special feature called glycoprotein. It helps them stay in their home because it acts as sort of a natural antifreeze. It's a protein that prevents all those ice crystals from forming in their blood and helps it continue to flow normally. Have you ever wondered how tiny animals like ants breathe? Try to open your mouth and throat, but at the same time, hold your chest and diaphragm still. The diaphragm is a muscular structure that separates the chest and abdominal cavities in all mammals. It expands as you breathe. If you can't do this, you can't hold your breath, because oxygen will still find its way into your lungs, at least enough of it to keep up with your body's demands. But generally, when you breathe, diaphragm is actively pumping air in and out of your body. To survive without the diaphragm doing so, you'd need more than one throat and a way smaller body. Now, ants have 9 or 10 pairs of openings along the sides of their tiny bodies. They're called spiracles, and each is connected to branching series of tubes. It's a system similar to human lungs. Their blood doesn't carry oxygen from those tubes to the rest of the body. Instead, the tubes spread this oxygen. The endings of these branches directly touch the membranes of their cells. This can only work in really small animals. When the body is bigger than 0.8 of an inch, these tubes are too long, so they can't diffuse air fast enough. There are a couple of reasons why giraffes have long necks, which, by the way, can grow up to be 6.5 feet long. From first glance, it seems evolution gave them those to reach the sweetest topmost leaves of the trees. It's exclusive access other animals can only dream of, so giraffes don't have to compete for the best bites. But over time, researchers realized it's not the only reason. They also think the neck could be a good factor when male giraffes go into combat, the same as male antelopes will use their prongs or when a stag uses its antlers. The thicker the neck, the bigger the chances to win the combat. Some insects play possum when there's a predator nearby. For instance, in one research, scientists have observed an antlion larva insect. It played possum for 61 minutes. How does this even help? Well, let's say you're in a garden where you see a bunch of identical bushes with soft fruit. You go to the first bush and start collecting and eating fruits. Yummy! It's so simple! And you're doing it relatively fast. But as you strip that bush, it's getting harder for you to find more fruits. Plus, it's kind of irritating because it takes way more time now than at the beginning. So now you need to decide whether to stay there and try to find more, or simply switch to another bush to have it all easy and fast once again. Assuming you are the predator, and predators are greedy, you'll just look for ways to eat as much fruit as possible in the shortest period of time. This means you'll go on and start collecting fruits from another bush, and the next one, and so on. Researchers use the same logic when it comes to bird and antlion larvae. It appears that insects waste the predator's time when playing possum, which has a significant impact on how things go later. That way, they encourage the predator to look for food elsewhere, because the predator doesn't have that much time to waste. So, pretending to be not alive is actually a good way to stay alive. Depending on the species, young birds spend from 10 to 30 days in their eggs. There's no air inside, but Mother Nature created a perfect mechanism for them to still be able to breathe. As a young chick is developing inside the egg, it grows some kind of hollow sac-like structure from the gut. It's like a tiny pouch that fuses with a second membrane that goes around the chick and its yolk. So one end is attached to the chick while the other is close to the inner surface of the eggshell. That way, this special membrane acts like lung tissue and connects the outside world with the chick's circulatory system. Most animals have 2 eyes, but some species need more. For example, some reptiles, amphibians, and fish have a 3rd eye on top of the head. It's not something that improves their vision that much, but it simply helps them navigate via the sunlight and regulate their body temperature. Many invertebrates have more than 2 eyes. Most spiders have 8 of them, because that way they can spot their prey easier. Well, the seahorse is an unusual fish. Normally, female animals carry a child, but seahorses do it the other way around. For 9 to 45 days, the future father carries the eggs inside a special pouch until the birth process begins. Then the male opens his brood pouch and squeezes out the children. The female anaconda finds the deepest puddle and spends her pregnancy in it. She will starve for about 7 months while pregnant. Then she will give birth to 40 children that make up 30% of her body weight. Her babies are completely independent and will explore the world around them. The Suriname toad looks like a normal toad but is totally flat. Unlike most animals, this one carries its future children not inside but on its back. Female toads have special holes on their backs for each egg where the babies develop. After 3 to 4 months, the little Suriname toads wake up and crawl out of the pockets on mom's back. Kangaroos are born just 1 month after conception, but they're not yet ready for life in the outside world. Newborn kangaroos are smaller than an inch. These tiny creatures crawl into their mom's pouch using their front legs. After 195 days, the kangaroo grows big and strong enough to leave the pouch. Sea urchins lay more than 2 million eggs, but not all survive. Male and female urchins throw something like a cloud into the water, which contains the future offspring. In the next few hours, if the egg cloud is not eaten by other sea creatures, the eggs will turn into a ball with microscopic hairs and then form a skeleton. At this point, they're ready for their own reproduction. Most animals either lay eggs or have a live birth. But the Jackson's chameleon does both and gives birth up to 30 young at a time. The female bears the eggs, minus a shell, right inside her body, instead of laying them as many other chameleon species do. In the yellowhead jawfish family, a dad fish takes care of the future offspring. The male broods the eggs inside his mouth. After the birth, the male carries his babies in this safe place. The brooding method lets the father keep his children safe because he can swim away from danger with the babies in his mouth. Sloths spend most of their time on the treetops. Their birth process is extravagant. The female lets her hind legs dangle and clings to a branch only by her front ones and gives birth in this position. The baby sloth grabs the mother's fur right after birth and climbs to her chest. The velvet spider builds a special room for giving birth and childcare. Just like weaving a spider web, she constructs a cocoon around it, where she lays up to 80 eggs. Then she makes a hole in the cocoon so that the offspring can escape. But this hole is too small for her, so she will never come out. For 2 weeks, she will feed the hatched spiders until they become independent. Whales, the biggest mammals in the animal kingdom, give birth underwater, so their babies have to rise all the way up to the surface to take their first breath. Mom whale will feed the baby with 54% fat milk for the next 4 months until it grows enough to eat on its own. Octopuses give birth only once in a lifetime. One of the arms of the male octopus is adapted to fertilize females. Some octopus separate the arm from their body and give it to the female. After laying eggs, female octopuses circulate water currents over the eggs to clean them and protect them from predators. Now imagine giving birth to a baby the size of a 4-year-old. Poor mom. But that's what kiwi birds do. Their eggs can weigh up to a quarter of their body mass. To produce such a big egg, female kiwis have to eat 3 times more than usual. Shingleback lizards also have a difficult pregnancy. These animals normally have up to 2 babies, which doesn't seem so bad. But the babies can make up a third of the mother's weight. That's like a human giving birth to a 7-year-old child. Giraffes are some of the tallest terrestrial animals, which has an effect on the birth process. In a giraffe birth, the baby first pokes out the front hooves, then the nose and the entire head. Within an hour, the baby is born. Before taking the first breath, the baby giraffe falls from the height of 6.5 feet to the ground. Ow! Hammerhead sharks can give birth without mating with another shark. Basically, they're just making copies of themselves. This was first discovered in 1999 in a Nebraska zoo. There are just a few other animal species, like some geckos and lizards, that can reproduce this way. Porcupines are known for their sharp quills. In the womb, these quills are soft, but right after birth, when coming in contact with air for the first time, they become hard and sharp. Naked mole rats are incredibly reproductive. They live in colonies and have a queen, who is the only female to give birth. First-time moms can have up to 15 babies. But every litter after, the number of babies grows. At her peak, a mole rat queen can have up to 33 babies, which is the largest litter size of any mammal on Earth. Hippopotamus pregnancies last about 8 months, despite the animal's big size. When ready to give birth, hippo moms leave the herd for 2 weeks to establish a strong connection with their babies. Hippo calves are born underwater, so they learn to swim from the very beginning. Zebras have a really hard time after birth, both for mom and the baby. Zebras are an animal who can see a newborn baby as a potential threat in the future. So when a baby zebra comes out, a male zebra can attack it immediately. The mother protects her offspring, often not having any time to rest. Elephants have the longest gestation period of all mammals, lasting more than 18 months. Though they live up to 70 years, most elephants won't have more than 4 babies. When the elephant mom is ready to give birth, other elephants from the herd form a protective circle around her until she delivers the baby. At birth, they can weigh up to 260 pounds. To protect them from predators, barnacle geese lay eggs on a cliff at 400 feet, which is the height of a 36-story building. When the eggs hatch, the little chicks face a problem. There's no food nearby because they're on a rock. So, at just a few days old, they jump off the cliff and try to make a soft landing. Although marine iguanas don't have to leap off a cliff, they're also in a hurry soon after they're born. Female marine iguanas lay eggs in an underground cave that they dig. This is a safe place to hide from predators, but sooner or later the baby iguanas come out of these caves to eat. And this is the moment when snakes start to hunt them. The fastest and strongest iguanas survive to enjoy the food. Okay, let's face it, we humans are pretty ordinary. I mean, we're no superheroes with superpowers, right? What, you didn't get the memo? But the animal world has a bunch of superheroes. Some creatures live forever, and those who seem to not care about the laws of gravity. Critters that are immune to venom, and those that can run on water. And some of them will send shivers down your spine. So the first superpower on the list is the ability to live without water. Kangaroo rats can get by without water for years. They actually don't mind living without any water. Humans, on the other hand, can only survive 3 days without water. Humans 0, kangaroo rats 1. These little buddies live in extremely arid desert areas and have to get water from the seeds and plants they eat. And although it may sound a bit disturbing, kangaroo rats also know how to extract water from their urine before they set off on a bathroom trip. This way, they don't waste a single drop of precious moisture. Well, that would come in handy at sporting events. Now let me introduce you to the Peter Parker of the animal world. Yep, seems like Spider-Man is real, but not human. Meet a gecko lizard, or simply gecko. This critter has a marvelous ability to climb up all kinds of vertical surfaces and can even go for a walk on the ceiling. This gravity-defying feat is possible thanks to the lizard's unique foot pads covered with tiny hairs. They can cling to almost any kind of surface, no matter whether it's smooth, hard, rough, or soft. One more fun fact about these guys is that they lack eyelids, so they always keep an eye wide open for what's going on around them. If you wonder how they keep their eyes protected, here's the answer. Their eyes are covered with a transparent membrane, the cornea. Sure thing, they can't close their eyes, and if they have something in their eye, they simply lick it off. Right, they clean their eyeballs by licking them. I guess that's another superpower. Any supersonic superpowers here? Sure. A 1-inch long subtropical shrimp disorients its prey with a sonic boom. Despite its modest size, the pistol shrimp is one of the loudest marine animals. When the shrimp snaps its claws, it creates a sound as loud as a sonic boom. Naturally, this sound stuns the prey, and the shrimp can catch it without too much effort. Now, in the comic world, there's venom. In the animal world, there's a guy that can be called anti-venom. Opossums are known for their handy trick of pretending to have passed away when a predator attacks them. But that's not the end of the story. These guys are also immune to rattlesnake and pit viper venom. The secret is a peptide that helps opossums neutralize dangerous chemicals. This is the reason why snakes are a favorite treat on opossums' diet. There's one curious thing they have on their diet – ticks. One opossum can hoover up about 5,000 ticks per season, and most of them are picked off their own bodies. Now, imagine a fish that is so notorious that it's called a dangerous fish. It's mabenga, and it literally translates to dangerous fish in Swahili. This monster lives in freshwater and doesn't mind having a crocodile for lunch. Not a whole crocodile, but mabenga can take a bite out of them. But to be honest, these guys are intimidated by the crocodiles, the same way the crocs are intimidated by them. Now, you're watching this video on some gadget, right? Well, we all owe the gadgets we have to the electric eels in some way. I mean, all gadgets have batteries, and eels contributed a lot to the invention of an electric battery back in 1800. I know, the batteries have unrecognizably changed since then, but still, the first electric battery ever was invented thanks to electric eels. Anyway, if you see one of them and want to thank them for their magnificent invention, don't do that. Thing is, they can deliver shocks up to 860 volts. You don't want to experience that. Now let's talk about the Count Dracula of the animal kingdom. Nope, I'm not talking about bats. I'm talking about the fanged vampire fish. These fish are known as payara and have two long fangs protruding from their lower jaw. Here's why some people associate them with vampires. Hippos are the beauty gurus, since they know how to save a fortune on skincare. Living under the harsh African sun, these animals secrete a sweat-like red oily substance that evaporates and keeps the animals' bodies cool. Besides, the fluid works as a moisturizer, sunscreen, and antibiotic all in one. But they're not the only ones with such a superpower. Mantis shrimp know how to produce natural sunscreen too, but they use it for eye protection. It's all about amino acid pigments, and these pigments act as special filters that contribute to their sharp vision too. That's what I call multitasking. Meerkats have dark patches around their eyes which makes them look even cuter. But these black circles aren't there just to make these buddies more adorable. They also function as built-in sunglasses. The dark fur on the patches blocks the blazing sun, and as a result, meerkats can gaze directly at the sky. On top of that, the sentry, a meerkat that watches out for birds and other predators, can easily see danger coming and alert its mates. Wild goats are famous for their climbing skills, but the alpine ibex from northern Italy is the champion. This critter can climb nearly any vertical surface, defying several physical laws in the process. Interestingly, the animals that do walk on the steepest cliff walls are typically mother goats with their little ones. Large males prefer to keep their distance and use flat horizontal surfaces. Smart guys. Some animals protect themselves with venom or nasty bites, while others use chemical tricks for protection. Listen to this. Some species of millipedes produce hydrogen cyanide and exude it when they feel threatened. Hydrogen cyanide is odorless but highly toxic. One little millipede can't seriously hurt you, but you may have burns or even blisters if your skin is sensitive. Plus, to make the picture even scarier, some millipedes glow in the dark. So watch out, and if you see a crawling spot of light at night, run away as fast as you can. When the bombardier beetle feels threatened, it sprays scorching liquid from the tip of its abdomen with a loud popping sound. As soon as the beetle senses danger, a chemical reaction starts in special reservoirs in its abdomen. The heat from this process nearly reaches the boiling point and also produces special gas that triggers the ejection. This super protection is usually fatal for the attacking insects. I guess so. Plumed basilisk lizards have an uncanny ability to run on water. First of all, their hind feet are equipped with long toes which have fringes of skin that can spread out in the water. As a result, a bigger surface of the lizard's foot comes into contact with water. Then, when it runs on water, it pumps its legs incredibly fast. This creates little pockets of air that prevent the animal from drowning by keeping it on the surface. Now, fleas can be annoying. But it doesn't make them any less amazing. These tiny critters can leap about 50 times their body length. If people could do the same, we would be jumping about a quarter of a mile into the air. Well, let's try it. The most curious thing about fleas' astonishing ability is that they take most of the power for leaps from their toes, not knees. So, what's your favorite animal superpower? I vote for the kangaroo rat. I don't like standing in lines for the bathroom. Fail. What a waste of an hour running around with a rolled-up newspaper trying to get that fly that keeps buzzing around your head. Well, 3 things. Why isn't it afraid of you? And why won't it just fly away? And how is it so incredibly fast? Flies actually have a pretty normal speed for their size. You're just a bit too slow. A tiny fly brain reacts several times faster than yours to what it sees. 1 second to the fly feels like 5 or 6 to you. When a fly looks at you, it sees you as if you're hanging out at the bottom of your local pool, moving around really slowly. What if you dropped a balloon from your bedroom window and watched it fall to the ground? That's how slow a fly sees regular things fall. So it has ninja reaction speeds, but it also has special eyes. They're divided into thousands of receptors that capture light all at the same time. You use small muscles to turn your eyes and head around to look in different directions. Flies don't have these muscles. They don't need them. They can see in every direction at the same time almost. No matter what side you attack from, that fly's almost definitely going to see it coming. You've probably seen supersonic planes in the movies, turning and flipping around at warp speed. A fly's kind of like that, but with way cooler wings. It can change directions mid-flight, stop, and dodge any obstacles. It can even calculate a flight strategy before it takes off. Well, this time you're really gonna swat that fly. As you raise your rolled-up paper, the insect's brain calculates where it's gonna land. The fly immediately puts its body in the perfect position, ready to perform an evasive maneuver. If your hand moves in front of the insect, its legs immediately tilt backwards to help it fly off in the other direction. Wow, that fly would make a great boxer or soccer goalie. So why does that fly even bother sticking around? You're always trying to squish it. Well, because your body is a 5-star feast and your skin is the buffet table with row upon row of tasty treats. As you move about your day, your skin releases sweat, proteins, carbs, salt, sugar, and all other chemicals that flies are crazy about. Imagine you're hungry and thirsty, walking through a desert. You come over a tall sand dune and see it. Free food! Tables of fruit, candy, sandwiches, and the world's biggest soda fountain. The bouncer looks big, tough, round. It's a giant slow turtle. Now you know why the fly sticks around. You're the turtle. You actually do have a chance to get that fly, but it's still going to get away 8 times out of 10. Say a fly sitting on your kitchen table. Here's what you do. You need to aim a few inches in front of where you think it's going to fly to. The fly brain will think you're aiming right at it, so you can actually outwit the fly and take it by surprise. The problem? It's really hard to predict the fly's escape route. So you're too slow. How about calling in some backup? Meet the tiger beetle. Speed 8 feet per second. It can't fly, but that doesn't matter. This beetle runs so fast, it loses the ability to see while it's moving. It aims itself at a target and then runs. It's not a ninja like the fly, and it can't change directions mid-sprint. It has to stop before each run. You walk at around 4.5 feet per second, so the beetle goes like twice your speed. But for its size, it's incredibly fast. It runs 125 lengths of its body in 1 second. Now, say you're 6 feet tall. You have to run 750 feet in 1 second. As long as it's on the same surface as that pesky fly, the fly doesn't stand a chance. Or maybe it's time to call in air support. The dragonfly is the fastest flying insect in the world. This little creature can reach 35 miles per hour. That's faster than you riding your bike down a steep hill. The dragonfly's wings also allow it to fly back, right, left, up and down, just like a helicopter. Doesn't matter how fast the fly moves, it's pretty much game over. Flies, dragonflies, and tiger beetles are fast because they don't want to spend a lot of extra time out in the open. There are a lot of hungry creatures around. But there's one insect that runs fast because if it stopped, ouch! To meet a speedy silver ant, you need to go to the Sahara Desert. The sand here is so hot you could fry an egg on it. Sandy. That's why the silver ant speeds at around 2.5 feet per second. It doesn't want to burn its feet. It also has triangle-shaped hair that reflects heat, helping the ant escape the scorching sun. If that ant were human-sized, it could run at 400 miles per hour, faster than the fastest car in the world. There's another ant that holds a speed record. The Dracula ant can't run as fast as the silver ant, but it has the fastest mouth in the world, other than me. It can open and close its jaws 5,000 times, all in the blink of an eye. Literally. How about another fast one, this time a bit closer to home, or in it? The American cockroach can hide in the walls, behind the stove, pretty much anywhere. It's almost impossible to catch. It can run 5 feet per second. That's because of its 6 legs. Each one has 3 knees. Its legs are covered with small hairs that sense any change in the air. That's why it reacts so fast when you walk into the kitchen and turn the light on. And the world record for fastest creature on land is the size of a sesame seed. It's a type of mite, and it can move at 322 body lengths per second. If you zap the mite to turn it to human size, it could go almost 2 times faster than the speed of sound. The mite can even change direction while moving. That makes it the fastest, most elusive creature on the planet. But let's find some animals that actually make us feel good about ourselves. The garden snail. It belongs to the mollusk family, and it likes to take its sweet time. If you were moving at snail speed, you'd take 2 steps every 2 hours. But snails don't care. They've been around for hundreds of millions of years. Snails use their shell for protection, but they have other tricks too. Some snails give off a nasty smell so that no one bothers them. If it gets too hot and dry, snails hide in their shells and seal themselves in using that cool slime they make. That slime also helps them climb up trees. Sloths are the slowest mammals on the planet. Thanks to their slow metabolism, food can take up to 16 days to get digested. Wouldn't be that hard to catch up to one of them, but their slowness actually helps them. You know how in the movies they say, "Stop, don't make any sudden movements"? Well, a sloth has that part down cold. Other animals simply don't notice them up there among the leaves. Manatees are one of the slowest sea creatures, but they're not too worried about anyone messing with them, except for humans in motorboats. They are huge and they have thick skin. It's like a sea tank, but way cuter. Another slow swimmer is the Greenland shark. It swims at less than 1 mile per hour. Like the manatee, it's large and in charge. No one's likely to challenge it face to face. But this all leads to the most hilarious snacking technique ever. The Greenland shark is basically slower than every single fish in the water. The only chance it has is to wait for some of those fish to fall asleep. Then it's snack time. The cool thing is that their easygoing lifestyle actually prolongs their life. The average lifespan of a Greenland shark is 300 to 500 years. They live in the North Atlantic and Arctic Oceans. Imagine you're on a cruise and you see one of these slow-motion giants. It might be 400 years older than you.
A pod of dolphins is happily playing near the water's surface in the North Pacific Ocean on a sunny day. They're about as happy as can be until the surface of the water begins to ripple. It becomes more pronounced, like a possible tsunami or an underwater volcano preparing to blast. Their instincts tell them to hightail it out of there, but they don't know which way is the safest path out. Abruptly, a tremendous roaring sound fills the air. The water explodes outwards as a giant whale bursts into the air. Hello, mama! Wait, that's no whale. It's an ichthyosaur, a giant sea dragon type monster from the Triassic period. It's a massive 55 feet long and weighs 45 tons. It doesn't look too dissimilar to a dolphin, but this sea monster isn't any cousin. The dolphins scatter back beneath the water. Fortunately for them, the ichthyosaur is not interested in having them for lunch. It's merely playing as well. This particular species is far more used to eating marine mollusks, smaller fish, and squid. But there's nothing in sight, so it disappears back below the surface, swimming majestically with its huge fins and long eel-like tail. It had once roamed the land, but like other prehistoric land reptiles, including modern-day whales and dolphins, it returned to the sea and evolved over millions of years. Its limbs have been transformed into flippers. Some species had digits on their flippers, or phalanges. They could almost pass for human hands. Well, hello there. Some possessed a dorsal fin. Their heads were pointed, and their jaws contained conical teeth to catch smaller prey. They had large eyes, probably used for seeing in deep waters. Their tail fin made for a powerful stroke. Like some other sea creatures, they could breathe air and were warm-blooded. They were sleek and as beautiful as some of today's ocean creatures. Unexpectedly, an underwater time vortex opens in front of it, sucking in everything in its path like an underwater black hole. The ichthyosaur disappears inside, flailing about, unable to control its journey back into the deep past. Soon, it spat out again into its own natural timeline of the Triassic period, during the early dinosaur age, approximately 247 million years ago. It swims with others of its kind. They lived in herds or hunting groups, while varying forms evolved worldwide, such as the smaller Mixosaurus. Let's stay with this one, because it will eventually find its way into modern human hands. In evolutionary terms, the ichthyosaurs lasted for a very long time, millions of years. There are many complex factors involved with how they became extinct, but in simplistic terms, environmental changes brought out declines in smaller food groups and more brutal predatory groups. Some fish had evolved as well and became too fast for the ichthyosaur. So we will leave our poor friend here, unable to find enough food and losing out to the tougher competition. It's hungry, tired, and weak. It simply drifts away with the currents, eventually finding itself resting on the ocean floor. Millions of years passed. During the Triassic and Jurassic era, sea levels gradually ebb away, exposing vast regions of the desert. The area we're focusing on became Nevada, in the western part of the United States. During the Cretaceous period, a volcanic island chain formed. Geological upheaval continued, bringing the ocean floor up into modern mountains. Embedded in the rock, well, you can guess, not only ancient invertebrates, but more modern creatures such as mammoths and giant sloths. What an incredible array of wildlife. But we're not here for them today. Let's find out what happened to our friend. Jump forward in time again to 1998. The place, the Augusta Mountains of northwestern Nevada, or more specifically, a place called Fossil Hill. Protruding out of the rock were a few vertebrae. Researchers could tell whatever creature it belonged to. It was clearly enormous. It was so embedded in the rock and complex that the excavation took many years. In September of 2011, the excavators found more of the beast, the well-preserved skull, forelimbs, and chest region. It wasn't until 2015 that the now obviously giant ichthyosaur could be fully extracted. The surviving fossils were a skull the size of a fully grown man, a shoulder, and a flipper-like appendage. Even then, it took a helicopter to move it. The team named the new species Symbospondylus youngorum. Symbospondylus is a Greek word meaning spine. Let's call this one Ichthyosaur Spiny from now on, because it should have a name by now. And let's face it, it's a lot easier to pronounce. Spiny was airlifted to the Natural History Museum in Los Angeles and further shipped to the University of Bonn in Germany. The study was undertaken by vertebrate paleontologist Martin Sander and his colleagues while collaborating with the University of Mainz. It was a unique and truly electrifying find, as the marine reptile was the largest animal ever discovered from this time. As far as we know, stated Martin Sandler, it was even the first giant creature ever to inhabit the Earth. You can think of Spiny as the underwater T-Rex of his time. He's also quite remarkable, as his type lived only 3 to 5 million years after a mass extinction event, known as the Great Dying. It happened roughly 252 million years ago. It took out approximately 90% of the world's life forms. What caused it? The short version is elevated temperatures and increased acidification in the oceans. Once one part of the food chain extinguishes, it causes a domino effect, as you can imagine. Soon, there's little left to eat, and only the sturdiest can survive. The atmosphere also had high levels of carbon dioxide. Theories argue that giant volcanic eruptions caused this in Siberia, known as the Siberian Traps. It was the largest volcanic eruption in the past 500 million years. The eruptions lasted a staggering 2 million years. Large volumes of basaltic lava covered a large area of Siberia. Even today, the site is covered by about 3 million square miles of basaltic rock. Other theories say that an asteroid caused the Great Dying, rather than the volcanoes. In any regard, the impact was the same, and 81% of Earth's marine species and 70% of the land-based vertebrate species were no more. There have been numerous mass extinction events, but Spiny's size and existence are extraordinary compared to the Great Dying. It usually took 9 million years for species to recover and grow to this size, but he came into being in less than half that time. Using sophisticated computer models, the researchers examined the likely food web running through the area now known as Fossil Hill. They recreated the ancient environment through the available data, finding that marine food webs must have supported giant creatures like the ichthyosaurs. The theory is that our Spiny fed on a diverse and rich diet of marine mollusks, known as ammonoids, that flourished from 1 to 3 million years after the Great Dying. The now extinct ammonites filled the ecological void following the mass extinction and had excellent living conditions without much prey to interfere with them. Ichthyosaurs also evolved rapidly because they were the first more giant creatures to populate the world's oceans. The mollusks they fed off were also exposed to less competition. Spiny had a massive food supply. He chowed down like there was no tomorrow. Unlike whales that become large due to eating foods like plankton, Spiny and his fellow species grew big on the ammonites, and it took them a much shorter time. That's a good message for you kids to eat healthily. The exciting thing for us today is that these results show that marine ecosystems can build up and respond well to such dramatic changes as climate, atmosphere, or water conditions. They may have had different pathways, but some ichthyosaurs and whales have similarities. They both have large sizes and a lack of prominent teeth. Sperm whales dive deep to hunt giant squid. Spiny hunted similarly. They use a type of filter feeding to extract the food from the water. Our friend likely ate fish and possibly squid, and ever smaller ichthyosaurs. Ouch. Other ichthyosaur forms had lots of teeth, with a skull more like a giant lizard. They had razor-sharp teeth. Ichthyosaurs swam the ancient oceans for nearly the whole of the dinosaur age. Ichthyosaur fossils have been found in many other countries, such as England, Norway, Japan, Germany, Colombia, China, and Australia. They were the underwater planet rulers of their day. As the sun sets 250 million years ago, we might imagine Spiny having a better outcome than he ultimately did, and popping his head out of the water to watch the orange hues of the pristine sky. He pauses for a moment before, once again, dipping underwater to join his friends, swimming happily away with the herd, looking for food and adventure in the deep blues of the Triassic Ocean.
That's it for today. So hey, if you pacified your curiosity, then give the video a like and share it with your friends.